This episode is brought to you by White Cloud Coffee Roasters, where every bean tells a story of adventure and passion. Nestled in the heart of Idaho's mountain wilderness, White Cloud has been mastering the craft of coffee for more than 38 years, bringing the spirit of the outdoors into every cup. Discover the difference in their premium beans, meticulously roasted to capture the essence of the mountains. From robust, full-bodied classics to creative flavored blends, White Cloud coffees are designed for you to appreciate the subtleties of premium coffee. Now, listeners of our podcast can get an exclusive 10% discount. Just use the promo code CREATIVITY at checkout. Visit whitecloudcoffee.com and use the code CREATIVITY for your 10% discount. Start your adventure today. Journey to whitecloudcoffee.com. Tap into your most original thinking. Organize your ideas and create the opportunities to launch your creative work. Unlocking your world of creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson.
Hello and welcome back, friends, to our podcast, Your World of Creativity, where we delve into the minds of innovative thinkers and leaders who shape our creative worlds. And today we're just so thrilled to have as our guests Karin Hurt and David Dye. They're the duo behind Let's Grow Leaders. And as I think about leaders in the creative areas, David and Karin, we're all known for kind of practical tools and development programs. Yet, sometimes we take it really personally. And the creative spirit can be pretty fragile. And you have a great book called Powerful Phrases for Dealing with Workplace Conflict. I can imagine that there's a lot of these phrases that are meant to get to the root of the issue and yet preserve the person. Karin, how do we balance those two things, feedback and creativity?
I think just start with thinking about where does creativity come from? And often it comes from pushing against edges of things, right? So you've got two people who have divergent points of view, divergent perspectives. And when you can have the real, genuine conversations and are not afraid to bring your perspective to the table, even if you know the other person's going to disagree, on the other side of that is often where the real creative breakthroughs happen. And I just always think about David and I usually have pretty much the opposite point of view on some of the biggest business challenges that we have. We're very aligned philosophically in our values and our approach to growing leaders. But how we run our business, our brains work radically differently. And there is a constant tension. But what we find is we can have those productive conversations. On the other side of that is where our best work really happens.
Great. And this idea of workplace conflict, David, when we were first introducing each other, the idea of workplace is even changing.
That's right. So when HarperCollins approached us to write this book, as we look at the landscape of work today, it looks like so many different things. And we surveyed 5,000 plus people around the world, 46 different countries, to find out what was going on with workplace conflict. And 70% of them said they're experiencing the same or more conflict as they had in the past. And when you get into reasons why, this issue of the changing workplace is definitely one of the reasons why. There are so many different ways that work can look. What is the workplace? It's hybrid, remote, across time zones, lots of different situations. The managers more and more are not equipped to lead through. And so you start to see disengagement rates for managers for the first time exceeding that of employees. And all of the conflict that then creeps into all of that is we don't have norms. Should we have our camera on or off? What does work from anywhere actually mean? One of our favorite examples of that was an organization who said, yeah, we've got a work from anywhere policy. And one of the folks got on LinkedIn with a picture of himself at the petting zoo with his laptop on a Zoom call with the ponies and was responding to all of the, oh, isn't that cute comments, but was not responding to colleagues' emails. And so, you get some of those kinds of things that can really create some conflict as well.
Much has been made not only of the workplace, but the workers across generations, that the boomer feedback to the millennial trying to figure out the Gen Z, and it won't be but a minute before the alphas are here. So,
hey, don't forget us Xers.
Oh, I think it's pretty typical that I would. You just
Yep,
caught me right
we're
there.
used to it.
Like, what does powerful phrases help us deal with that? Because how those feedbacks are interpreted is pretty big.
Yeah, we in proper phrases, we talk about 4 dimensions of productive conflict. And what you're talking about here is the one of the most important dimensions, which is connection. Are we connected? And another one is curiosity. And I think when you're dealing with multi-generational organizations, the connection and curiosity are so key. So if we start and I look at you and I say, you are clearly from another generation and you don't get it, right? Then we are not connected if that's how I'm approaching our relationship. And I am not actually showing up curious about the contribution that you could be bringing to the table. So I think starting with if you're working with people who are in a different generation, how do you look for common ground? How can you get to know one another as human beings? How do you invest in those relationships? And then from there, how do you stay curious and about what you can learn from other people's approaches? I have an amazing relationship. I don't know what to call it besides a friendship, but it's also, I would say, a bit of a reverse mentoring relationship with a woman in her 80s who is really ahead of me and how long she's been doing this kind of work. And what we find is there is so much creativity that comes out every time we meet, because we are really tapping into the perspectives that we have from being in different generations and can truly help one another.
And I think about the problem solving that required in creativity. You're solving customer problems, you're solving system problems, you're solving whatever. And we've got to tap into all those ideas. And yet the leadership of the problem solving is often in question.
And the good news is that anybody involved can be that leader. And that is one of the messages of this book, Powerful Phrases for Dealing with Workplace Conflict, is that the solutions are available for anyone who wants to kind of say, you know what, I'm going to take responsibility here. And so from a problem solving or a decision-making standpoint, you need to come up with some creative solutions. Let's assume that we've got some connection. We've connected with one another as human beings, the way that Karin was talking about. The next thing that we need is clarity. And we have 12, we call them the GOATs, greatest of all time powerful phrases. And there's 3 for each of these dimensions. But one of the phrases that's a GOAT phrase for clarity is, what would a successful outcome do for you? So if you're talking to a colleague or your boss or a customer or somebody in a different department and you're working together on something and there's a problem to be solved or an opportunity to explore, if we can ask, what would successful outcome do for you, we're going to uncover people's motivations. So, that your colleague might really need to look good for their boss. And what you're trying to do is make sure that you're home to spend time with your family. And somebody else is, I really see an opportunity to demonstrate my creative ability here and what I'm capable of. Okay, now that we know all of those motivations, now we can start crafting a solution, get creative, and come up with something that's going to work to satisfy all of those. But if we never have that discussion, we just stay locked in whatever it is we come to the table with, and we're not able to really get creative and solve real problems.
I think that's so key. David, I can imagine the team is rallying behind the problem. We're ideating, we're brainstorming, we're coming up, the successes, the high fives, but it doesn't always work that way, does it, Karin? I think of the failures, the setbacks, the disagreements. How do we navigate those as well?
Yeah, so I think one of the most important dimensions there is starting with that shared understanding of success. So what is success outcome do for you? And then, but we say, so we don't achieve it. Okay, so then one of the things that we often encourage people to do is what we call a post-project celebration. So when things go wrong, you're not just saying, we're not doing a post-mortem of what went wrong. We're doing a post-project celebration where we get curious about what did work, what have we learned along the way, and we celebrate that learning and say, okay, at least it's not all is lost here because now we're this much smarter. So I think that's part of it. And also when things are really going wrong, to understand, and when you're in a high acute conflict emergency, what is breaking down? And is it interpersonal or is it structural? And it's interesting. We actually interviewed Ralph Kilman of the Thomas Kilman assessment. That is what I asked him if I could call him the grandfather of workplace conflict, and he said that was fine. And he talks about how so much conflict is really coming from the systems and processes. We think it's interpersonal, but actually we are being set up for a failure in some circumstances. So when things go wrong, to be able to say, is this about our human connection? Or is there something bigger that we need to be fixing here?
I love that language matters. Obviously, you believe that too with powerful phrases. But where postmortem became the post-project assessment. Somebody died?
Right? Even the military says after action review, so even postmortem. Goodness.
Yes. So the phrases do matter. And handling these conflicts constructively, that's really what it comes down to, right? Can we learn and grow from these things?
Yeah, absolutely. So often when we think of conflict at work, many of us have that kind of aversion. Oh, I don't want that. We even had a client last week and somebody said, no, I don't do conflict. Nope, don't want that. And so often when we're thinking about conflict, we're thinking of destructive conflict where there's not respect for one another's ideas or the individual, and it's tearing people down and suppressing voices and all that kind of thing. And what we want to help people move to with these 300 plus powerful phrases in the book is productive conflict, where we really are engaging in meaningful creation and creativity to solve new problems, to come up with new approaches, to do something better, to improve our experience, our customers' experience, to improve a product or a service, whatever that might be. That takes conflict, but it's got to be healthy, productive conflict to get to that collaboration.
And I assume this takes practice. Otherwise, do people say, you're trying to technique me? You must have read a book. Don't be throwing those phrases at me. Yeah. How do you make this natural? And part of your leadership?
Yeah. So first of all, you can't script every element of a conflict conversation. What we're offering here is some ways to open the conversation. And by really starting with the 4 dimensions. So are we connected as human beings? Do we have real clarity of a shared understanding of success? Are we showing up curious about what's possible here? And are we moving towards commitment, a shared agreement? So the first thing you can do to make it feel like you're not that you've just read a book and are doing something to someone is to just take a moment when you are feeling anxious or stressed about something that's happening interpersonally. Is to say, all right, what is going on here? How do I diagnose what's needed here? Is this a need for pulling back and getting some human connection? Do we need to start there and remind each other that we care about one another and the same things? Is there a lack of clarity about expectations? Because often conflict comes from an expectation violation of some sort. Or are we moving too fast and not really taking time to hear other people's perspectives? So if you can really start there, and then identify, and then you can bring in a goat, greatest of all time, that just opens the conversation. Like one of our goats is, tell me more. If you really can hardly go wrong with that. If somebody is coming to you and they're upset and you're just like, wow, sounds like you're really upset about this. Can you tell me some more about what's going on for you? Or what does this look like from your perspective? Is a curiosity goat or a commitment goat? What is one next step we can both agree on? All of those are very easy phrases that don't feel like you got them out of a book, right? They're pretty natural. Yeah.
I do remember coming back from programs as a new manager, as a young leader, and somebody would naturally say, you just came back from a seminar, didn't you? Yes.
Well, and
because I tried to say, can you tell me more?
Well, one of our suggestions in that regard is don't shy away from that. Be upfront about it. And so often, if we can be vulnerable and transparent and say, hey, I just went to this program and I talked to these 2 folks, Karin and David, and they had this idea that if we check for understanding with one another, which is a powerful phrase in various forms throughout the book, that it's going to help us avoid a lot of headache, heartache, and frustration. So here's what that looks like. So what I'm hearing you say is this. Do I have that right? So I'd really like to practice that language, like own it. Step up to the plate, own it. Yeah, I just learned this and I want to share it. And let's see if we can do it together because it has the payoff on the other side.
Yeah. Maybe a moment of self-awareness to say, I bet I used to say, you know what you ought to do.
And one of the things that we have made available we have a resource center, a conflict and collaboration resource center with all kinds of free resources that people can use with the book as they're reading it together. One of the resources in that center is a one-page job aid of the 12 goats. And we were just working with a team the other day, and what they said they were going to do is just print that out and use it together. Okay, we're in conflict. Which goat should we be using right now? And so to not hide that you're studying this stuff, lean into it, as David was saying.
That's so good. I want to talk about you two and your own creativity. But before we get too far, Karin, where can we find more about these resources in the book?
Okay,
Yeah.
so our website is letsgrowleaders.com. And if you just go to the book tab, you will scroll down and you can see the Powerful Phrases Resource Center right there. It's got a multi-page book group companion guide, so with discussion questions and templates, and you could build your own goat, really cute little goats you can print out and use to have a team discussion, as well as the job aid I was talking about.
Oh, fantastic. You both have impressive backgrounds. Karin, you were a former wireless executive, and David, did I read, not only executive, but elected official. There's no workplace conflict in politics these days, is there?
None at all. And yeah, that was a great experience in terms of learning to navigate some of these things.
Yes, indeed. Now working together, though, your personal experiences, you're really shaping not only your own leadership, but really developing programs through Let's Grow Leaders. How do you two collaborate? And tell me a little bit about the creative process behind the books.
And I don't think there is an answer for anyone. It is finding the thing that works for you. Because Karin and I, as she mentioned, we think very differently and have different approaches. When we were writing our very first book, I tend to be an operational type of person. I think that way. And we were putting our thoughts together, and I said, let me make a spreadsheet. And so we got our chapter titles, went through our book titles and everything. And then it created a system where we could each draft, exchange drafts, rewrite the other person's, go back to the original, and keep track of it all. And Karin said, wow, this is awesome. And if you were any more organized than this, I could not work with you.
As soon as you said spreadsheet, my creative muscle went weak.
And I have a very weird creative brain, I think. So what happens to me is at every single night at 3 a.m., I wake up with my very best ideas. And one of the things that happens, and then I have to, when I wake up in the morning for real, then I have to just immediately, that's my most creative time, and I just got to get everything else that dawned on me in the middle of the night out onto paper. But one of the ways that this shows up in our book writing process is inevitably, and because we have written 4 books together, but 3 that are traditionally published books, and I always have a dark night of the soul about 6 weeks before it's due to the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, we have to completely change everything. We need to restructure. We need to reorganize. We got to chop this part out. And so we were writing this book, and David looks at me and goes, you haven't had your meltdown yet, and you're about running out of time.
It's like, can we move this along?
Yeah, we're 4 weeks. You can't have a meltdown.
we can't skip it. There is no way to skip it. It has to happen. But can we advance the clock here?
Love that.
And we did. And she had, and the thing that I'll say about those Dark Night of the Souls that Karin has is that they almost always there's something in her intuition that is right on, spot on about the issue. And so this time around, it wasn't reworking the whole thing, but it was reworking how we introduced the topics and some things. And it was really powerful. I'm very happy with the results.
Mm-hmm. And do you find you're able to then, of course, push through, make the revisions you need to, and finally you say, I think it's ready?
Yeah.
And it's a cliche in the creative world and the publishing world, but it really is true that no book is ever finished. It's just published.
Mm-hmm.
That is so true, because the day we send off the manuscript, we continue talking about the concepts. We continue working with people and sharing them every day, and they feed into the concepts and they share their experiences. And then we say, oh, what about that? And okay, the book's committed, but we continue to, refine the content.
Yeah. Courageous Cultures was the book we wrote before this. And we felt we feel really good about the book, and we know that it has helped people, particularly executives, create environments of psychological safety and creativity and innovation and getting that from every team member. And if we had an opportunity to write it again, there are things that we have learned along the way that we would definitely change and make it even more accessible. So I think it's never handled.
Sure. And of course, new ideas continue to percolate. Even now, I'm sure as you're exploring different workplaces and emerging in this whole idea of authenticity we've been talking about and courageous culture, I couldn't help but really emphasize that part. Much has been said about culture at a company, but boy, courageous, that's a whole different adjective. But what are some of the new ideas that are emerging for you?
One of the things that we really capitalizing on that, Mark, from a creative standpoint, that we really wanted to build into this specific book going forward is to make it continue to grow and evolve and build beyond us. And so one of the concepts in the book, in addition, Karin already mentioned the goats and how you can create your own goat. And we want to know your powerful phrases. So we encourage readers, let us know what your phrases are and let's incorporate them into the body of work ongoing. We also have a concept that we talk about, where does conflict come from? And so we did this 5,000 plus person research around that. And there are a number of different, we call them conflict cocktails. And so different combinations of limitations, frustrations at work that create common conflict scenarios. And so we invite people to make their own conflict cocktail or mocktail and talk about what. And so we have, just last week, I don't know, Karin, what did we get? 12 or 14 of some really fun, different kinds of these conflicts and people talking about them and how to solve them.
I love the feedback loop that you continue the dialogue and keep the phrases coming and the application of the phrases. I love that.
Yeah, well, I think from a leadership and creativity standpoint, that's so important, is that you are sparking a conversation that creates in the process of any kind of leadership work that you're doing, whether you're an author, whether you're a team leader at work, whatever you might be doing, that's part of the gig. It's part of the job, is that creative aspect.
Definitely. Karin and David, I can't thank you enough for a wonderful conversation. I've learned a lot. I could take a few GOAT phrases and probably apply them today. Do you find that people walk away from your book and your programs and say, here's something I can do?
We do. It's funny. One of the things that most people who've read it have called us and said, I use it in my family too. Because we have conflict in all aspects of our life. And so these phrases work really well for pretty much any situation that you're in.
Yeah, wonderful. Can't wait to apply more. So I thank Karin Hurt and David Dye for the conversation and really for your commitment to developing human-centered leaders. It's really what we need these days.
Mark, thank you so much. It's been absolutely our pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into Your World of Creativity. If you like today's episode, be sure to subscribe and rate and leave us a review. And then stay creative and come back again for our next episode. We'll continue these conversations. We love talking to creative people about how they get inspired, but also how they organize ideas and then ultimately gain the confidence and the connections to launch their work out into the world. And that's what it's all about. So until next time, I'm Mark Stinson, and we'll keep unlocking your world of creativity.
Unlocking Your World of Creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson. This program was produced by BSB Media, creators of IntelliKey Leadership Stories, Unlocking Your World of Creativity, and thepeaceroom.love. Are you an author who's tired of the long waits and low royalties? Exact Rush is here to change the game. We specialize in publishing with precision, and we get your book to market in just 3 to 6 months, not years. But we're not just about books. We also support your photography, web design, and content creation needs. Our focus ranges from spirituality to pop culture, and we're excited about our diverse lineup of upcoming releases. So, if you're ready to keep more of your hard-earned money and get published faster, Exact Rush is your ticket. Visit exactrush.com and turn your creative dream into a profitable reality today.